So today we are going to start the next mini-series on Champagne Supernova with a deep dive under the surface to try and figure out every single track recorded in the studio recording. So first up, we're going to look at the drums and the percussion. Now the most obvious place to start is the drum track. So the first thing we have is the drum track by Alan White. Next, we have one that I was particularly surprised to find because it's fairly unusual. It's snare overdubs. There is an entirely separate stem in Champagne Supernova in which Alan White kind of plays snare rolls. You can hear it very exposed in the outro where he plays a rallentando slowing down towards the end of the song. Next we come to one of the most fundamental instruments in the Oasis sound. We have the tambourine. Especially in the first two albums, Oasis used the tambourine as a kind of section defining tool. So often what they played was pretty consistent. They were just hammering distorted chords all the way through, and the drummer might change the cymbal or drum he was riding for the beat, but often their sound wasn't hugely dynamic, so they had to add the dynamics in afterwards, and the tambourine became one of their most fundamental tools for doing that. And so the tambourine, being one of the most fundamental instruments in the Oasis sound, of course, that is also in Champagne Supernova. Next, if we listen in carefully, at the second chorus we can hear down in one of the stems a shaker egg. Now it might not be an egg, you can get different kinds of shakers, I just call it a shaker egg, but there's definitely a shaker that comes in actually quite loud on that particular stem from the second chorus. And lastly, in the percussion section, the most important instrument that exists in the entire world. Did you hear it? It's a triangle! At the end of every heavy section of the song, as it comes out of the heavy section and into the quieter bit again, there is one ding on a triangle. And let's have it right, it's not a real song unless it's got a triangle in it. For those of you who've also watched the video I did diving into the studio tracks for Don't Look Back in Anger, you'll notice that on this album Oasis really went in for the percussion. They built up some of their really detailed and complex textures by adding in just tons of percussion. This song is actually an unusual one in that it doesn't contain any hand claps. So the real keys to the Oasis sound in the percussion section are tambourine and hand claps. If you have hand claps and the tambourine in a guitar-driven rock song, it will immediately make people think of Oasis and 1990s British indie music. I think they were risking it sounding like a massive drum battle or, you know, a percussion workshop at the local primary school if they'd added much more in there than they already had. So that's the end of the percussion section. Track 5, The Mighty Triangle. Next, let's take a listen to the rhythm instruments. Now, if we listen to the bass track, the big thing I notice is when I compare that bass track to the ones that are definitely Noel, where Noel has openly said, I played bass on that track. The bass on this, I think it's Guigsy, to be honest, because it's so much more imprecise than Noel's playing. When you listen to the bass playing that is definitely Noel, that Noel has openly taken credit for, you can tell it's locked in to the same groove as the rhythm guitars. And when it's Guigsy, it tends to be a bit imprecise and a little bit sloppy. You even have record of interviews with Owen Morris where he would openly say the bass was low in the mix because the playing was so imprecise. So when I listen to this bass track, I think that's probably Guigsy. It doesn't sound as locked in as some of the other tracks, so I'm going to say bass guitar, Paul McGuigan. Now here is a really interesting fact about this song. There is not just one bass line, there are two. Listen in carefully on the second chorus and you can hear two bass parts an octave apart, and you can tell it's not an octaver effect because you can hear Guigsy's imprecise playing kind of moving out of sync with itself. Next we have the gorgeous, lush sounding acoustic rhythm guitar, which is one of the most important instruments in building the texture of the quiet sections of this song. Now for me, when I listen to the acoustic guitar rhythm playing here, there's no question in my mind that that's Noel Gallagher playing. The playing is very subtle and fluid, it's not chord bashing, nor is it bar chords, so I'm going to say acoustic rhythm guitar, Noel Gallagher. Next, buried down in one of the stems, we have this clean electric rhythm track which consists often of just a single strummed or arpeggiated chord. It's clean and it's got a tremolo effect on it. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that clean tremolo effect on an electric guitar, that is probably Noel Gallagher playing his electric guitar through the 1963 Vox AC30 that he used for Don't Look Back in Anger, because those amps have a tremolo channel, and it sounds to me very much like he's just used that tremolo channel, turned it up, and is doing single strums and letting that tremolo effect ring over the acoustic strumming. Also, the track contains some very subtle arpeggiation and quite delicate playing, so I'm going to say that's Noel Gallagher, that's probably not Bonehead. Next we have a kind of electric crunch setting, which again to me it sounds like just a guitar straight into an amp, so it is a separate track. This crunch electric guitar track, it's basically an exact mirror of what Noel Gallagher plays on the acoustic guitar. It's an electric double-tracked version of the acoustic part. So this again is obviously Noel. Now when the song kicks in with the really heavy section where the drums build up and everything kind of cuts loose for the second chorus, we hear this. Now that's very raw, punky playing. That's bar chords, there are strums of open strings between chord changes, and there's not a lot of subtlety there, which does completely suit the section. So that really heavy gain, distorted rhythm track there, to me that's obviously Bonehead. I don't know if listening to that you can tell the difference in rhythm style between that bit and the electric crunch section that we just listened to. The difference in subtlety level is massive. Noel's rhythm parts, they're comparatively precise. They are locked in with the groove of everything else, and then when this heavy distorted electric rhythm part kicks in, it is like some bloke has just turned a Marshall stack up to full in his garage, plugged in and just started rocking out. The strumming is a little bit inconsistent, but it works. The chords all sound like bar chords, and to me the whole vibe of it is different to the other rhythm tracks we've listened to. So I'm going to say high gain rhythm, Bonehead. So now we've done drums and percussion, rhythm instruments. Now it's time to move on to the lead instruments. First up, we have a clean electric track that plays pretty much throughout the whole song, only dropping out for the very heaviest sections. And it's very, very obviously Noel. He's doing his signature pentatonic rolls all the way through. Sometimes he does them up the neck, sometimes he does them down the neck, but it's very clearly Noel. Then also playing at the same time, very audible in the intro, we have a second clean electric lead that is just playing alternating octaves of a high E. And this second clean electric lead track is playing over the top of the first clean electric lead part. Next, we have some distorted electric lead that kicks in over the bridges. So where you have the very heavy distorted rhythm section that I believe is played by Bonehead, you also have Noel doing pentatonic rolls with a lot of distortion. This distorted lead part is kind of buried in the mix, but you can hear it, and it just serves to reinforce the dynamic lift that you get in the bridges. During the heavy bridge sections, there is also a second distorted lead guitar part that you can hear playing underneath Noel's pentatonic rolls. Let's have a listen. Next, on a separate stem, we have Noel Gallagher's solo, which is just a very signature Noel Gallagher riff in the pentatonic scale, but he plays it twice. He plays a high octave and a low octave using the same tone and same guitar presumably, just 12 frets apart from each other. So that's two distorted lead tracks there. But there are two solos in Champagne Supernova, and the second was recorded by Paul Weller. We're now going to move on to a particularly interesting section, unusual instruments and effects. Next we come to one of the controversial questions about Champagne Supernova. What is this? The Oasis Champagne Supernova video shows Bonehead playing one of these. That instrument is a melodica. It's a keyboard that gives a similar sound, but you have to blow into it and kind of play the notes. Bonehead playing a melodica in the Champagne Supernova video has led to lots of websites claiming that there is a melodica in the song. They've always sounded to me like two EBO tracks. And this is what Owen Morris says.
Well, I can't remember exactly when we picked up the Champagne Supernova, but some night that week, or some day that week, Noel had decided to carry on with his guitar overdubs. And he sat down and he did, I think, there are things like those EBOs, there's two EBOs that go throughout it, doing a sort of violin-y kind of descending thing, da-da-da-da, that go all the way.
This is two EBO tracks, and he just used the melodica in the music video as a prop. Next we have a particularly interesting effect. There is controlled feedback being played presumably by Noel buried low in the mix that can particularly be heard during the intro and the first verse. Now, this isn't an EBow, because an EBow generally gives you a completely stable, straight line of noise. This has a rise and a swell, and then it drops away, and then a rise and a swell, and then it drops away. So this is controlled feedback. It's not super prominent in the mix, but it's another one of those really interesting little production tricks and techniques that have been buried in the sound, and it contributes something. Next, at around the 5 minutes 37 mark in the song, we hear this weird kind of almost birdsong effect. It sounds fairly close to the laughter that you hear on Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. This sounds very close to that, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. And obviously, very audibly at the beginning, we have the sound effect of water and waves. The lead vocals are unmistakably Liam.
We don't know why.
Now, we also know that Liam recorded backing vocals. If you listen carefully, you can hear his voice amongst the backing vocals group. And Owen Morris also talks a little bit about Liam being completely off his face while doing it.
There was another session on Champagne Supernova, somewhere in the middle, where Liam got kind of really drunk and did all the R's and all the sort of beatly R's on the guitar solo.
In the album liner notes in the credits, it says that Paul Weller also, as well as doing his solo, did some backing vocals. So which backing vocal parts are his? Well, if we listen to this stem that contains one backing vocal line and Liam's lead vocal line, we hear this falsetto come in, and then listen to what we hear still ringing on after Liam finishes singing.
In a champagne supernova, a champagne supernova, 'cause people believe that they're gonna get away for the summer.
That gravelly, raspy voice, that's not Liam, that's not Noel, it's Paul Weller. So those falsetto backing vocals, my guess is those are all Paul Weller. When you listen to them in other places in the song as well, you hear that raspy kind of gravelly edge just in the falsetto. It really adds something to the song.
We were getting high, we were getting high, we were getting high.
If you listen to this section, you can hear Noel's voice in amongst all the other parts. So those are the 27 tracks that I can personally hear in Champagne Supernova. And to call this a massive track it's clearly an understatement. This track is the Kraken. It's huge. There is, however, the possibility of one or more tracks that I've missed. Listen to what Owen Morris says here.
So that was another session. That was the last session in Rockfield on Champagne Supernova. Yeah. And I think I put some like Beatley mellotrons and stuff like that on.
So there is mellotron somewhere in Champagne Supernova. He can't remember whether it was removed or not. So I'm going to put a question mark next to that one. If you can hear where the mellotron is, please tell me in the comments. I've gone through various different stems. I haven't listened to every single stem start to finish to see if there is mellotron on it, but there was definitely multiple mellotron lines recorded for the song. Were they in the mix? Were they cut out? Don't know. But if you can hear the mellotron, and I don't mean the ebos, please let me know. And that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this new mini-series on Champagne Supernova. Plenty more to come.